Hello, my name is Al Sipek. Today we're doing part two of a two-part series concerning the proposed renovations of Central Fire Station, which will be Article 2 on the town ballot, and I believe that's on March 13th, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
You got it, Al. March 13th.
Okay, as you can see with me today, I have our town manager, Kevin Smith, our fire chief, Darren O'Brien, and we have the best finance director in the universe, Doug Smith.
Thank you, Al. Morning.
So in part one,
How come we didn't get an introduction, Chief? You know?
Sure.
All right.
in part one of the renovations that are proposed for the Londonderry Central Fire Station, we took a tour through with Chief O'Brien and Battalion Chief Zins, and we showed you the deficiencies, how tight it was, leaks in the roof, things like that, the storage problem and everything. So now that we've seen what the existing one looks like, now we're going to talk about the new one. And what we're going to talk about is the design, the need, the financing. So I'm going to start with Chief O'Brien. Chief,
Good morning.
that station was built in 1978. It is now 40 years old.
It is.
As we've seen in the video, there's no more changes that you can do with that.
No, what we found over, like you said, the station will be 40 years old this year, and I think throughout the years we've pretty much modified every space that's in the building to either a new purpose or to try and expand the purposes that we have for the needs that we have in the building. As you saw through the walkthrough, it's getting pretty cramped for space. The apparatus is not getting any smaller with the new apparatus that's out there. So both the bays for the apparatus storage and the administrative facility is lacking a lot of space, and that's what we're looking to address.
Well, I know from the photos we saw, to get by on either side of the station, you had to just about turn sideways to walk through. It was so crowded.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the new design. How will the bays be different than the new design?
So what we're currently living in is about 8,400 square feet. The proposed new conceptual design is adding about 13,000 square feet. In doing that, we're adding 2 additional bays, one to the south side, one to the north side. Those bays will be a little bit wider. We're raising all the doors about 1.5 feet to give us a clearance of 13.6, so the apparatus can get in and out without having to worry about ice jams or anything out on the front apron and, you know, ripping off lights or ladders or anything like that. So there'll be 2 additional bays, both drive-through. So that station there, when it's all built out, will be able to hold 12 pieces of apparatus. So that will, you know, kind of encumber our needs for the vehicles that are currently stored outside. We have our utility outside that we built a kind of a carport off of the town's fuel shed this past summer to keep that under cover. So I'm hoping that this will, well, I know this will basically be able to, you know, store all our apparatus for many years to come.
So you're all proposing also a driveway that goes all the way around the building now. And why are you doing that?
Well, again, the fuel storage shed that's out back there, that's the current fuel fill-up for all town vehicles. So the fire department, the police department, the school department, and occasionally a highway vehicle will come over. So the way it works now is, you know, people that are coming in to fuel up have to enter in off of Sergeant Road, come up a back driveway, which is, you know, cramped for space as we, you know, start off, and basically have to make a U-turn out in the backyard in order to fuel up and head back out. So when you get fire apparatus parked out back when, you know, crews are conducting training or anything like that, it gets a little cramped for space. So the new proposal will be to continue that driveway around the south side of the building and meet up with the little access road that comes up behind the library.
Okay, that's pretty good. Now, I understand too, will the existing part of the station, if the renovations pass the voting, will you still be able to operate there while the construction is going on for the additions on the side?
Yeah, the construction management company that we signed with, North Branch Construction, has done numerous municipal facilities throughout the state the latest being Laconia Fire, and they were a 24/7 operation. And talking with the fire chief up there, Chief Erickson, it was seamless. These people came in and they made sure all their T's were crossed and all their I's were dotted, and if there was any problems, any time of the night, somebody would be out there to address it. So he said it was a pleasure to have them on board and working with them. So that's what we're looking forward to.
So that's one of the benefits of not building in another site. You don't have the site work. You don't have to build a brand new building. You don't have to tear down an existing structure. You're just adding on to what's there, and you'll still be able to operate with it.
Correct.
So I see that as a major benefit over other types of designs.
Yeah, my biggest concern was obviously our communication center. As of January, we took on our third community, so now we're not only dispatching for Londonderry, we're dispatching for the town of Hampstead and the town of Pelham. So we have a lot of people that depend on our services and our communications in order to get the information out there for the emergencies that they're responding to. This month here has been a very busy month. I mean, we're already up over 350 calls for the month just for Londonderry. I mean, there was one day that the communication division, I think, dispatched over 57 calls between the three communities. So yeah, that's a very important piece of this puzzle, is to make sure that that can be a seamless transition on moving from the new facility, from the old facility, and there's no hiccups along the way. You know?
I think there's been a big difference in the number of responses you have since 1978, when the current station was built, till today.
Yeah, when the station was built, it was built to house 3 people, and 3 people on duty, and then the fire chief and the deputy chief. Today we're currently, we have 10 guys on duty, sometimes 11, plus 4 daytime staff, sometimes 5. So from going from 5 people up to 12 people, we're getting a little cramped for space.
So let's ask the big question then. How many years life expectancy would you figure with the renovations completed?
Well, going with the warrant article that we're going through, myself and the building committee are looking at, the type of construction that is going to have the longevity that the community is looking for, that's going to meet not only the needs of the department, but the needs of the community, and have the durability and the longevity for many years to come. So this should be a 40 or 50-year building.
And I understand you're going to have a EOC in there and a dispatch center that meets standards?
Yep, we're currently designing the communications center to be NFPA compliant, hoping that someday that if more opportunities arise to take on other communities, that we have the capabilities of doing so. And our training room right now, as you'll see in the first video, is pretty tight for space. So the new one that we've designed is not only a training room but a community room that we can sponsor public CPR classes, public first aid classes, and also act as the town's EOC.
And I assume that you would be applying for federal grants if this went through as well?
We are. I just met with our Homeland Security field rep last week. Talked to him about what our process was going through here, and yeah, we will be applying for a Homeland Security grant that basically the funds that we have for the square footage of the facility that we're building, specifically the training room, the EOC, we can use those as matching funds towards this grant to apply for, getting the seating, getting the tables, the projectors, the whiteboards, anything that we need for the EOC and stuff. So it comes out through the grant.
Sounds good. Is there any other benefits or anything else you can think of that the public needs to know about the new design?
I think
Well, wait a minute.
Yep.
One thing that, I hate to interrupt, but one of the things that I saw when I did the video over there was the tarp on top of the, for leaks. So if this doesn't go through, you're going to have to do something with that roof over there, aren't you?
Yeah, the roof is, we usually repair that probably between 3 and 4 times a summer. It's a rubber roof, it's old. It's got a lot of splits up top that every so often you'll notice a different leak in that tarp that you saw when you're going through the first walkthrough. It's kind of a one that's determined to keep leaking no matter what you do with it. So we put that over there to keep the keep the water from dripping on top of the rescue truck, which was causing the roof to start to rust. One of the big things I wanted to mention was back a few years ago, NIOSH conducted a study on the causes of cancer in firefighters. And they found between 1950 and 2009 that firefighters had a 9 to 14% increase over the normal public for their risk of cancer. So part of this new station design is what we call a decon room and a specific gear storage area room. So the gear will be stored just off the apparatus bay in a negative pressure room. And when the crews get back from mitigating an emergency, a building fire, a car fire, or anything like that, or even a medical emergency, there's a process that they will go through now to go in, clean themselves off, get the gear cleaned. We'll have extractors and dryers in there where they can wash this gear, and then the gear is stored into a specific room. None of that gear goes home with them. None of that gear enters the living space of the fire station, and it's a big concern of all the area fire chiefs now is seeing those statistics and what's out there to see what we can do for that.
That's a good point that the public needs to know about, the higher cancer rate for firefighters, and like we took the tour of the station, for them to do anything, to go upstairs and take a shower or something, or even downstairs, they have to walk through the living area right
Going
now.
through all the living space.
So this decon area is a pretty important thing.
Yep. I mean, a lot of the new equipment that they're coming out with nowadays as well. I mean, I'll give you an example. The new SCBA packs that will meet, I believe it's next year's standard, that everything can be taken off of those packs and the straps, because what they're finding is the straps are holding all the carcinogens and getting into the gear and where it sits and where the pressure is on the firefighters. That's where a lot of the cancer is, where they're finding a lot of the problems coming from. So everything now is being made and being manufactured where it can be decontaminated and washed and cleaned properly to get those contaminants out.
Sounds good. Anything else before I go to our esteemed town manager?
No?
Kevin,
Al,
could you explain some of the political process, budget-wise, and everything that's gone into Article 2?
sure. Well, I'm going to leave the numbers portion for the best finance director in the universe.
The other Smith brother, yes.
Yes. I guess first to put this in perspective, the current fire station is as old as Tom Brady. And we all know how old Tom Brady is, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's all we've been hearing about for the last 6 months. So it's old. But no, I mean, look, the reality is the current operations of the fire department have completely outgrown that central fire station. As Darren alluded to, the calls for this January, are the highest we've ever had in the history of the fire department. And that's only going to continue for the foreseeable future. We're going through a development period in Londonderry, similar to what we went through in the late 80s, early 90s. And there's a lot of growth, commercial, industrial, residential. Calls for medical emergencies are going to continue to go up as well. We have the advent of Woodmont coming online now. And so, the demand for services continues to grow. And if anyone walks through the current central fire station, they'll see that between the equipment we have, the apparatus that we have, the staffing that we have, it's a wholly inadequate fire station. And so if it doesn't pass this time around, expect to see it again in the not so distant future, because it's one of those things where we're going to have to address this need sooner or later. That being said, it really is the last piece of capital improvements that we have left on the town side, which is pretty remarkable.
That's an important point that people need to realize.
Yeah, I mean, we have a new town hall that was built in '04. We have a new police station that was built around the same time. We've put an addition on, a fairly large addition to our senior center. We built a new housing area for the DPW garage. So this, and we have the other two smaller fire stations in the north and south areas of town. So this is really it, the last capital need that needs to be addressed on the town side. And, you know, and it's one of these things where anytime you're taking on a big capital cost like this, the question always comes up, is it a need or is it a want? You know, and you hear that all the time when any large capital cost comes up. And I think if people look at the existing fire station, realize it's 40 years old, and our demand is completely, you know, has gone up much higher than what that station does to serve us now. I think they'll come to the conclusion that, yeah, we need to make these renovations. And that's really what it is, too. We're not building a brand new fire station, although it'll look like it by the time it's done. But these are really renovations to the existing fire department, and the fact that we were able to do it on site, I think, is big. We did not have to acquire land to build it on, and go through all of the site prep work that would have had to have been done otherwise. As far as the political process here, of course, it's on the ballot. We'll be voting on it March 13th, as you noted. It needs a 2/3 vote because it is a bond, so it'll need 66% of the voter, or 60% of the voters to approve it. So it's it's got a higher threshold because you are bonding it. But that being said, I think if people educate themselves about this and again understand that this really is a need for the town, that it is going to suit what we need for the next 40 to 50 years. We got a really good bang for our buck with the existing fire department. I think we're going to get a very good bang for our buck with these renovations to Central Fire. So I'm optimistic that it'll pass, but at the same time, I think people just need to be educated about why it's necessary at this time.
Right. You talk about bang for the buck. The original one, when it was built, cost $150,000, and the day it opened, the assessed value was $450,000. And it was built basically pretty much by volunteers,
Right.
the Army Reserve, and everything else like that. So we continue to get our bang for the buck in Londonderry.
We do.
No question about that.
Yep, absolutely. And the other thing is the chief's done a great job of replacing equipment and replacing apparatus over the years. We've got a great leasing program now where we're building a lot of these costs into the budget, so it's not a huge expenditure when it's time to replace a vehicle. We're really the envy of stations all across the state in terms of what we have for apparatus, but we've run out of space to house that apparatus. So, we've got the staffing levels that are adequate right now, though staffing is going to increase over the next few years. We've got the apparatus that we need. Now we just need the space to accommodate all of that.
Sounds good. And now we're going to talk to Doug Smith, our Londonderry Finance Director, and he's going to explain how it's going to be financed.
Thank you, Al. So similar to what Kevin was talking about in terms of construction projects, this will be the kind of the last piece of our infrastructure. And it's also been a while since we've been in the bond market. Most recently, we did do a refunding of some earlier debt, but road bonds have been pretty much what we've done over the past 10 years or so. So it was kind of reacquainting everyone, the budget committee and the council, with what do we need to think about when we're contemplating a $6.4 million expenditure here.
And if I might interrupt for a minute, what is our status as far as the agencies that are concerned with bonding, our ratings and so on?
We have recently just got our renewed ratings. We're a AA2, which is, while it's not the best, it's put us in pretty good stead in terms of what we might see when we go to market for this particular issue. So we talked a little bit about what are the factors that should be considered in determining what kind of a term. We looked at 10, 15, and 20-year terms. Interest rates are speculative. Obviously, they're been a little bit volatile recently. We're basing our estimates on the best information we have at this time. at the end of the day, while the total cost of the project will actually be increased by going with a 20-year term, I think the council put this in perspective appropriately and talked about the focus being on impact on our tax rate. So while it's a little more total cost, it spreads out the cost in terms of tax rate impact over the term. So we're in a pretty good situation with our overall debt. In 2024, we'll pay off the project Kevin referred to, the town hall and police department, also with some open space in that issue, but over $680,000 of principal will drop off after the completion of fiscal year 2024. So one of the things we talked about was, from a timing of issuance for this particular debt, we have the good fortune to be in a pretty good cash flow situation, so we can literally front the costs for this project, delaying the issuance of the debt a little bit and bringing us closer to that time frame where there'll be a shorter period where this will increase the
So
tax
I'm going to
rate.
interrupt you right here. A, what is the total cost?
Including,
Well, the total,
interest
what
if
are
we-
we going to be voting on?
we're going to be voting on 6.4 million for the
Okay,
bond issue.
6.4 million, okay? So can you explain this fronting the cost and everything? So
Well,
people understand?
Yeah, essentially, the question becomes from a cash availability perspective, are we able to pay for these costs as we go? If the bond issue and the project is approved, that money will be appropriated to us in fiscal year 19.
Right?
So from a warranting situation, the tax warrant that's issued for that year will essentially cover those costs. Because we are in a good cash position, we're able to pay for those costs as we go, rather than having to issue the debt in advance to
I
pay
see.
for those costs as we go.
So there is also usually timing between the authorization of a bond and when it might actually be needed, and a good example would be Exit 4A. As far as the authorization goes and when things were actually charged against that authorization?
Similar, yeah, in some ways it's similar to that. You know, we're fortunate in that we're in a good cash position right now as a town, that, as Doug mentioned, we can delay the debt payments a little later and to coincide around the time that these other payments start coming off the books, so that it's almost a net zero, if you will, to the taxpayers. Which, you know, and that's the whole thing, is you want to try to make it so that it's as least impactful to the tax rate as possible, but also that it gets paid off in a timely manner as well.
Okay, so I have to assume from the discussion we've had so far that you're not going to need to spend that 6.4 million on July 1st if it's authorized.
Correct. I think the time frame currently, in terms of construction, if this is approved, goes out into July and August of 2019. So assuming we start on or about July 1st with the entire process, we're talking 12 to 14 months
Right.
to completion.
And that's usually what happens with construction projects,
Yep.
is you don't pay immediately. You have that time frame where it becomes, okay, so in that time frame, how much will you have to spend?
Well, I think we're looking at over that 14-month period, assuming the estimates are pretty close. We'll spend 6.4 million over that 12 to 14 months, depending on how those, pan out in terms of where the brunt of it is spent. I guess kind of depends on the construction schedule, but 14 months to completion of the 6.4 total spend.
Okay, so this Article 2 is just strictly a bond article.
It is.
It is. Okay.
The other important thing to mention here is that we're required to put 3 years of tax impact on the warrant article.
I was going to ask about that.
So people will see what the impact will be, not only in fiscal, based on the current assessed value of the town and the current tax rate. People will be able to see what the tax impact will be in fiscal year 19, fiscal year 20, and fiscal year 21. Because If we were just required to put fiscal year 19, it would be deceiving. It says the tax impact, I think, is zero for fiscal year
Right.
19. We don't want people to think that there's not a tax impact on us. There is, but it differs when you go further out than just the first fiscal year.
One of the things I wanted to mention, Al, is that $6.4 million that the estimate that we came up with last year at the warrant, the town passed for a feasibility study to see if we could do anything to the existing structure and location. So the town gave us $35,000 to do this feasibility study. In doing so, we were able to get the environmental site surveys done, hazard mitigation for if there was any hazardous materials within the building. We were able to secure an architect and secure the construction company. So that $6.4 million that I've given the town for an estimate on the cost of this building, that's all based on basically conceptual designs and conceptual floor plans on maybe a half a dozen pieces of paper. So you're going to find that the construction management company's contingency is very high right now because they don't have all the documents and the engineering designs of what is actually going to be in the building. So that number right now is at 10%. So just that number alone is almost $500,000. What you'll find over time is as the plans start moving forward and we get more and more pieces of the puzzle, that number will drop. So in that $6.4 million, after going through it with the construction company, it breaks it all down into site work, foundation, concrete work, metal work, roofing, interior materials. And each one of those categories, there's a savings that can be incorporated in there with the more information that you have going forward with the design process. So that's $6.4 million. I mean, again, like I've told the town council and the town manager, we're not looking for anything elaborate. We want to get things that are gonna meet the needs of the community, meet the needs of the department, and that we're not going back within 5 or 6 years to replace everything because it was value and engineered out. So we're going to get equipment and mechanicals and stuff like that that are going to have the longevity that we're looking for, and the materials that we're not going to have to keep repairing. And but again, being a taxpayer in the town, living here all my life, I think it's very important to do my due diligence to make sure that I'm saving every possible penny that we can to make this a building that the town is going to be able to utilize for many years to come, but also drive by and say, you know, that's a nice fire station.
So
Something to be proud of.
6.4 is a cap.
Yes.
6.4
And
is
it will
cap.
be design build with a limit of 6.4.
Correct.
Yeah, the authorization is to bond up to 6.4.
Up to.
Doesn't mean we need to spend 6.4.
I think that's an important point too, because if you see 6.4 on there, you know, why is it that high? But it doesn't have to actually be that
Right.
high when you issue the bond.
Right.
Right.
Also, one of the considerations for not issuing the debt in advance of construction and costs starting to accumulate. The longer we can delay into the process, the better we'll know if it turns out to be 6 million or less, we have an issued debt that we really didn't need to.
And here's a question that I had sent you in the email, and I'm no expert in municipal finance, that's why you're here. But as years go on, if you had extra money in fund balance, can you apply that against the bond to reduce the time or the amount or anything? Just curious.
One of the conversations we had with the council and the budget committee was in concluding that stretching this out over a 20-year term made the most sense. Also gives us the opportunity to monitor our cash flow situation, the other economic conditions of the town, to determine if at some point 5 or 10 years into that issue, would it make sense to refund it? If economic conditions, interest rates are favorable, maybe shorten the term, but to have that flexibility. And obviously it's a year-to-year monitoring situation to determine that we don't miss an opportunity to, again, save some money on the tax rate by
So at some
rethinking
point, you
things.
could renegotiate the bond.
Some of that depends on the original terms of the bonds, but we'd be very careful to keep open all the options that we possibly could have in that regard.
Well, it certainly sounds like you have actually done a fantastic job with the financing. A lot of thought apparently has gone into this. And I hope people are watching this so they get a better understanding of how municipal finance works, especially like you said, since you haven't had any actual bonding in a long time.
Right.
And we're in a good position. What's the rating agency that we have a AA2?
Well, there are a couple. Fitch is Standard & Poor's are the two that typically we look to. LFI made to help folks understand a little bit more about this. The website that's being put together to display information about this is going to show a little bit about, based on the current estimates we have for a $6.4 million issue, what does that look like on the tax rate? As Kevin mentioned in the article, it will show the first 3 years of projected impact. We'll put a schedule out that will show over the entire term of the bond. Additionally, we're going to provide information that would help the individual homeowner to say, okay, I know the assessed value of my home. What does this project look like for tax impact to
Right.
me? So that they can make an informed choice of whether to vote for this article.
Yeah, and I think people also need to realize that, I know how busy they are, and, you're talking about your own public safety when you vote on issues like this. And I hope people understand that this is definitely a public safety issue. The demand is going to be there. We've got developments popping up everywhere, 55 plus housing. I'm sure we're going to have more assisted living and everything else like that, which puts a great demand on ambulance service, as the chief will attest. So,
And now I would just make the point too that the demand is there now. We're not doing this because of what we think the demand will be in 10 years. Even so, and I say that because if all of the development stopped tomorrow, which it's not going to, but if it did, this is still necessary now.
You're right.
So it's not only needed for today, it's needed for 10, 20, 30 years down the road. But I don't want people to be under the impression that, well, the economy could tank tomorrow, all this development could go away, and we don't need this fire station anymore. No, we need the fire station now, but it will also serve us well into the future.
good point, because I was talking about the future, because another thing people need to understand is there's plans approved for developments on the books,
That's right.
but they haven't been built yet.
Right.
And you're right. What you have today and then what you have in the future is nothing but an upward trend anyway.
Right.
So definitely, there's no question about that.
Yeah.
Now, is there anything, I know, before I forget, there is a website that not only has part one on the video that taxpayers can watch.
There is. I'm hoping the website is planning to go live this week. It's www.londonderry.reno.com. And people can get on that, as Doug mentioned, and they can look at the tax rates and stuff like that. It shows the proposed conceptual design of the new building. It shows the first part of our documentary here on the current station
Right.
challenges that we have, and gives you information on voting, and it links you also to a Facebook page that as we're going through this process, we can look at and answer questions if people have questions. And again, if anybody has any questions, any citizen from the community, if they have any questions, feel free to call my office, come in and see me. I'll take you for a little tour around the fire station and show you some of the things that we're facing right now.
Sounds good. So you think this week the website will be up?
I'm hoping to get the website up this week. Yeah.
Part one is not only on CTV 20, but it's on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
This will also be on CTV 20 and also be uploaded to YouTube. And then a link will be put for this section on the website.
And then in the very near future, I'll have some pamphlets, trifolds at Central Fire. I'm going to put them at the library. I'm going to put them at the town hall. And again, we'll give you information on this whole process. So those will be distributed throughout the town so people can take a look at those as well.
Sounds good. Is there anything else you can think of that the public needs to know?
No, I think we pretty much explained what we're looking at here and what we're looking for. And all I ask for is just to educate yourself and look at what we're faced with. And I look forward to your support on Article 2 in March.
Well, I have to say I'm very appreciative, and I'm sure other taxpayers are of all the work that all of you have done, along with the Budget Committee and the Council, to come up with this kind of a plan, this kind of funding, Doug's great explanation of how the bonding process works and everything else like that. And I thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I thank you for watching. You will be voting on Article 2 at the Londonderry voting at the high school on March 13th, obviously, 2018. And whatever you decide to do, I always urge everyone, educate yourself to all the issues, everything you see on the ballot, make up your own mind. I'm in favor of this because this is definitely a public safety need. And as our town manager has pointed out, this is the last capital project for a while for the town. So again, thank you for watching and be informed.